I think for me, living on the third floor is high enough. Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage and Rouges or Red Rooms is a brand new Canadian psychological thriller that was written and directed by Pascal Plante. Aside from its domestic theatrical release, it was only shown at film festivals so far. I have seen it here in Vienna at a wonderful slash film festival where it was programmed as the surprise movie, which was great because I knew absolutely nothing about it, which made for a really mesmerizing experience as the movie is really mysterious and secretive as to where it's going, which is also why I won't go into too much detail in my review. Red Rooms is about a serial killer being on trial and a young mysterious woman being obsessed with the case. I have said it many times before, but movies usually function as mysteries, and certain movies of course more than others. It's about how they tell their stories, how they give us information about the story, the characters, the themes. And Red Rooms is a movie that is very slowly, very carefully laying out its little breadcrumbs. It's certainly what you would call a slow burn, especially in the beginning. But this one really sucks you in over time and makes you want to connect the dots. And it's not so much about if the defendant has committed these horrible murders, although it's also a little bit about that, but more about our protagonist Kellyanne and what kind of person she is. She's a super secluded, isolated young woman who lives in this very anonymous apartment complex, high above the city. And she spends her time completely on her own, playing poker on the internet, working out, doing some model jobs. She seems super disciplined and very cold, which is exactly the way I would describe this film as well. Red Rooms is a meticulously crafted film that is very stylized, but in a super minimalist and realistic manner. It is presented in a classic 4:3 aspect ratio, and from the camera work, acting performances, dialogues to the editing, sound and production design, everything is arranged with so much care that I would call it almost clinical. There are a few super long continuous shots in there that create this uneasy feeling. There's one super impressive one in the beginning in the courtroom that let us witness the opening statements by the prosecution and the defense. It also gives us a look at the parents of the murdered young girls, a look at the defendant who doesn't talk at all throughout the movie, and then the shot ends with the almost hypnotically slow camera zooming in on our protagonist, who is sitting in court as a simple spectator. Kellyanne is such a unique protagonist, as it's almost impossible to completely get through to her, to understand what she's thinking and feeling and what her true motivation might be. And even after the movie's over and the experience is lingering on and maybe even haunting you, her character still remains rather ambivalent, I think. She's played by Juliette Guérépier, who gives a powerhouse performance as this completely restrained, cold and enigmatic person. There's another important young woman in the movie, Clementine, played by Laurie Barber. In many regards, she's the opposite of Kellyanne, as it's very clear why she's there in the courtroom as well. The two form a very interesting bond, and the movie, which is completely sober, even allows for some very few little humorous moments that all happen naturally because of the characters and their situation. When it comes to explicit imagery, there's basically none to be found in Red Rooms. It's a movie that let your imagination fill out the missing visuals. It's all about atmosphere and psyche. And I found it fascinating how Red Rooms is able to suck you in and make you really tense while depicting rather mundane activities like sitting at a computer. But it was actually so fascinating how Kellyanne is accessing or almost living in this parallel world of the dark web. I personally don't know how realistically it is actually portrayed, but it comes across as super authentic, and it creates such an eerie and ominous mood, especially when most of the sound is just a loud wind that is constantly pressing against her high-floor apartment. Above all, I think I appreciate Red Rooms for being such a unique film that tells its story in a way unlike any other I have seen before. Personally, the finale didn't completely work for me. There's one scene that I found almost a bit silly, to be honest, but it nonetheless makes an impact and certainly makes for a great film to talk about after you have left the cinema. So in German I'd say, Red Rooms ist ein einzigartiger, faszinierender und verstörender Film, der auf großartig minimalistische und hypnotisch langsame Art und Weise die fast undurchdringbare Psyche unserer Protagonistin freilegt. I give Red Rooms 7 out of 10. It's more like 7.4, but I don't do that. Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about Red Rooms. You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd and also on Patreon, simply at TheJimmyCage. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.